So we're going to look at pages 88 through 89. We're looking at degree requirement number 5, and we're looking at the language requirement. So if you remember, this was a question on the pop quiz. So not everyone has to complete a language other than English. The type of degree will dictate if you have a language requirement. So the types of degrees that do require competency in a foreign language include the Bachelor's of Arts degree, so BA degree, in Liberal Arts and Science. So they show competency that is equivalent to the 3rd college semester of a language other than English. The next type of degree is the Bachelor of Music. These students have a very specific competency levels depending on their major, and that's outlined on page 89. The next type is Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Dance. These students must show competency that is equivalent to 2 semesters of a college-level language other than English, so slightly different based on the type of degree. So last week we learned 2 places in the catalog that show what type of degree a particular major is working towards. So you can always look up the major page, or you can look at the summary of curricula on page 102 and 103, types of degrees offered by major. All right, so any questions on that before we look at examples? Okay. All right, so let's look at the art major. So does it have a language requirement for graduation? And if you look through pages 137 through 139, the answer is it depends. So is it an art major with a BA in liberal arts, or is it an art major with a BA in applied? So it'll depend on the major emphasis. Okay, so art history emphasis, wait. Okay. I thought this is kind of jumbled here. So studio arts. Can somebody look at studio arts and tell me what type of degree? Liberal arts and sciences. So would that have a language requirement? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So yeah, studio arts is a BA in liberal arts and sciences, so therefore requires competency in the foreign languages. If it's an emphasis in applied, so like if you looked at sculpture, that's applied, right? Yep. So then that will not require foreign language. So another example is I am an art major with an emphasis in art history. I will earn a BA liberal arts degree, so I do have a language requirement, right? Yep. And how do I satisfy the language requirement? Well, then I'll go back to pages 88 through 89, and those will show me how to complete the competency. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Okay. So now, knowing that I have to fulfill the foreign language requirement, I'll want to check the different ways I can show competency in that foreign language. So pages 88 through 89 shows all the different ways to show competency. One way to show competency is by successfully completing the 3rd college semester of a language other than English. So that's the very first example of how to show that competency. So on page 89 are the sequences of SDSU's foreign language courses, starting with the 1st semester of the language, the beginning level, through the 3rd semester of the language, which is the intermediate level. You can also look up the department page of the foreign language that you want to take. So you could look up Italian, German, etc., that department, and you can see the sequencing of the courses. So as an example, let's turn to page 434, the Spanish department. And I'm going to have a volunteer find the language requirement for the BA degree in Liberal Arts and Sciences and read that.
usual sequence of coursework is Spanish 101, 102, and 201. Refer to section of catalog on graduation requirements for additional ways to satisfy competency.
Perfect, thank you. So passing Spanish 201 is showing competency, and therefore it's satisfying the foreign language requirement for graduation. So even though Spanish 201 clears the requirement, if the student has no background in the language, then they'll need to take 3 courses in sequential order in order to prepare. Or actually 2 courses, sorry. So they'll have to start with the 101, then they'll go to the 102, and then they can take the 201. Okay? So if you look at page 435, you'll see the first semester is 101, the second semester is 102, and the third semester is 201. And then the student will need to complete the courses up and through Spanish 201. Does that make sense? Okay. So, but maybe the student does have background in Spanish. Maybe they've taken Spanish in high school. So then we have to figure out how many years of high school Spanish, we'll stick with Spanish for now, has the student taken. Bless you. So what we'll do is we'll check the prerequisites of the language course that the student wants to take. And if they've met the prerequisite, they can take the course. So, example. If you've taken 3 years of high school Spanish, if you look at Spanish 201, it says that that's the prerequisite. You either need 102, or if you have 3 years of high school Spanish, you can take 201. So then that student can just take 201 and they've satisfied the language requirement. They would not need the entire 3-semester sequence of the course because they already have some proficiency in the language. Does that make sense? Okay. But in another example, let's say it's a transfer student and it was a long time ago that they took high school language. So even if they have the 3 years of high school Spanish, they might not remember any of it. And they might not feel comfortable taking Spanish 201. So they'll want to start at one of the lower levels of the language, 101 or 102, and then work their way up through passing 201. Any questions so far? Okay. All right. So let's look at another example. We're going to look at Japanese. So if we look at page 307, again, I'm going to grab a volunteer to read out loud the language requirement for the BA paragraph. I'm going to grab a volunteer from this table. Perfect, thank you.
Students selected to complete the study of Japanese to fulfill the language requirement for the Bachelor of Arts degree in Liberal Arts and Sciences must also complete Japanese 211 or the equivalent level of achievement. The usual sequence of coursework is Japanese 111, 111, 112, or 211. Refer to section catalog graduation requirements for additional phases.
Perfect, thank you. So by completing Japanese 211, that's the 3rd semester, they'll fulfill the competency, but notice that it's a different course numbering. Okay, so it's not the 201, it's a 211. If you look at pages 307 and 308, you will see that if you have a student who has taken Japanese at another school or who has a special background in Japanese, in order to continue with Japanese courses, they actually still need to take a language proficiency test. So questions about this would be directed to the Japanese department. So not every second language is going to have that standard, oh, if you have 3 years, you can go right into the 3rd semester. It's going to depend on the language. And we find that by looking at the department page. Any questions? Yes?
Can you take these courses for credit, no credit? Or does it depend on the student?
It depends on the student.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good question. Any other question? Okay. All right, so let's look at some other ways to show competency. So if we go back to page 89, area A, items 2 through 6 show us other ways to fulfill competency. So if I can have a volunteer from the very back row, please read me item 2. On page 89, area A, item 2.
Successfully completing the 4th year level of high school courses in a language other than English.
Perfect. So high school coursework. So by passing the Oh, wait. So high school coursework, okay. Item 3, the table in the second to last table in the back. One volunteer, please, to read item 3.
Successfully completing the next test, proficiency examination in a language other than English.
Perfect, so taking a proficiency exam in that language other than English and successfully passing it. And then the next table up, if you could read me item number 4.
Graduating from high school where English is not the major language of instruction is in a non-English speaking country.
Yes, perfect, thank you. So if the student graduates high school in a country where the main language of instruction is not English, they're considered a native speaker and they have thereby satisfied the foreign language requirement. Another way is by passing the AP exam with a 3 or higher in a language other than English. So you could check the AP chart for satisfaction of foreign language requirement. And then other groups of students who have the foreign language requirement. So item B is majors for the Bachelor's of Music degree. It depends on the major. So it's different ways to satisfy the foreign language requirement. And item C is the Bachelor of Fine Arts in Dance. It requires competency to the equivalent to the 2 semesters of college study in language other than English. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. So in summary, first, you need to know the type of degree. If they haven't cleared language competency with high school coursework, so they don't have that 4 years, then we need to know what language sequence they want to take. We want to refer to that language department in order to find out the course sequence, and we want to read the course descriptions to see what are the prerequisites. Okay? Okay. So now what we're going to do is a foreign language activity. And the 2 questions you need to answer based on the card that you get is the type of degree and how to satisfy the foreign language requirement. So once you're given your student scenario, you'll have 5 minutes to take a look at that and evaluate it. And you want to answer what type of degree will the student earn based on their major. You want to decide what the student should do to fulfill their language requirement for graduation. And you want to think about what classes will they need to take, or have they already satisfied the foreign language requirement. So remember that you need to look up prerequisites. You need to check the foreign language requirement on page 89, all the different ways that they can show competency. And then you can look at the foreign language requirement on the major department page and the language sequence. All right. So I actually, do I have 6 tables?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. How do we want to do this? I have 6 scenarios.
1 per table?
Yeah. And then just maybe just give it to the person in the middle. All right, perfect. So every table will get their own scenario, so you can work on it as a group, and then we'll go over all the answers.